Hi there. Welcome to Lumani Unfiltered. I'm Stephanie and today we're diving into the wonderful, wacky world of therapy, specifically how finding the right therapist can feel suspiciously like dating, minus, hopefully, the awkward who pays for the check moment. Trust me, if you've ever swiped through mental health directories like their Tinder, you're not alone. Quick disclaimer. I'm not a therapist, doctor, or any sort of medical professional. I'm just a regular human sharing personal experiences, opinions, and some real talk I've picked up along my own rocky path to mental health. If you need specific advice, definitely seek out a licensed pro. Stick around because at the end, I'll reveal my top 5 tips for snagging the perfect mental health ally. All right, if you're new here, welcome. Grab coffee, tea, or maybe a glass of wine, no judgment. If you're a returning listener, you already know the drill. We keep things real, unfiltered, and occasionally a bit sassy. Ready to jump in? Let's do it. All right, let's rewind to my first venture into therapy. This was a few years back, and I was smack in the middle of my divorce. Everything felt completely upside down. I was suddenly single, juggling bills, swirling emotions, and that lovely voice in my head saying, "You need help like yesterday." But therapy wasn't exactly on my radar before. When I grew up, mental health talk was just not a thing. If you were hyper, people figured you just needed more recess. If you seemed sad, they'd say, "Cheer up." Not super helpful, right? By the time I hit my late 20s and early 30s, my friends and I started quietly admitting that maybe we'd been dealing with anxiety or depression for most of our lives. We just never knew how to label it or handle it. So, divorce in full swing, I decided I needed a therapist. And let me tell you, that search was like trying to find toilet paper during COVID, anxiety inducing and downright competitive. I scoured Yelp at 1 a.m., reading reviews that ranged from "she's an angel on earth" to "run, don't walk." Then there was the matter of cost, $200 to $400 a session. I remember thinking, am I paying off student loans or seeing a therapist? But I was so desperate. I started dialing numbers, leaving voicemails, and hoping I'd find someone that had an opening and who didn't sound half dead on the phone. Eventually, I found someone who had space for me and my then husband. We were doing couples therapy, trying to salvage what was left of our marriage. Boy, the marriage ended. But this therapist stuck around. She transitioned into being my personal therapist for a while, and it felt like a lifesaver. I had this safe space to vent about everything: my childhood, my heartbreak, my anxieties about the future. And that's where I first realized therapy can be a game changer. Just having someone listen without judgment was huge. But here's the twist: therapy, like any relationship, can hit a plateau. After a couple years, it started feeling more like a comfy chat with a friend than actual therapy. I wasn't being challenged or guided into digging deeper. It's like a long-term relationship that's coasting on routine. How do you even do that? "Thanks for hearing all my baggage for years, but I need to see other people." It's awkward, right? It's weird, and it feels a bit like betrayal. But if the sessions aren't helping you grow, it's your right. Heck, it's your responsibility to find someone who can. I remember panicking. Like how was I supposed to handle it head on? I am conflict adverse, and I remember staying with my therapist for a little over 6 months because I just felt so guilty. I felt like I almost had a best friend relationship, and crying at home and even crying in my sessions. And I felt like she didn't know what was happening. But when it came to the time of actually communicating with her, she knew exactly what was coming. And she was so kind and so thoughtful. And I'm sure she probably had this happen to her time and time again. And she even offered me referrals to another therapist. Now, I want to pause and address some questions I hear a lot. One, how do I know if I'm done with a therapist? My rule, if you've been in the same emotional rut for a while, or you're just chit-chatting without breakthroughs, it might be time. Therapy should challenge you in a productive way. Think comfortable discomfort, not treading water. Two, isn't it rude to leave a therapist? Listen, a good therapist wants you to succeed, even if that means moving on. They're professionals, not besties, though it can feel that way sometimes. So no, it's not rude. It's healthy self-advocacy. Three, how long should I stay with one therapist before deciding it's not a good fit? Typically, I'd say give it a few sessions unless you see a massive red flag. If you're calling and you hear aggressive tone of voice or you're just not jiving, sometimes you know right away that you're not going to ever build a good rapport. But trust your gut. It really could be off right off the bat. However, sometimes it does take a few sessions. Have you had any? Think about relationships that you've stuck with too long out of habit. What are reasons that prevented you from moving on? That you either felt guilty or you didn't know why you felt discomfort in feeling comfortable with having conversations? Share your experiences in the comment sections now. After my therapy breakup, I felt like I was on a mental health version of Bumble. No photos or thirst traps, but lots of profiles saying CBT, psychodynamic, 25 years of experience, sliding scale, blah, 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 blah. In about 2 months, I tried 4 different therapists. 4. Each time it was the same dance. Hi, do you treat anxiety or do you take my insurance? Quick vibe check. It sounded boring or pushy. I'd politely vanish. Sorry, not sorry. Trial session. I'd share highlights of my backstory. If I clicked, awesome. If not, I'd keep searching. It really was exhausting, but it confirmed something critical. Therapy is deeply personal. What works for your friend might not work for you, and that's okay. The important thing is not to settle for a therapist who doesn't give you that sense of, yeah, I could really open up here. Because if you can't be honest in therapy, what is the point? Now let's get to the practical stuff. You know me, I love a good list. Here are 5 tips to help you snag the therapist of your dreams, or at least one who doesn't freak you out. 1, get clear on your must-haves. Think about cost, location, insurance, therapy style, cultural background, or telehealth. Ask yourself, what's non-negotiable? For me, a big factor was someone who could give me gentle but firm pushback. I didn't just want to vent. I wanted to grow. When I left my therapist after 4 years, initially, I thought I wanted someone who could satisfy my people-pleasing nature, a yes ma'am factor. But in the end, I really understood that I had to have a therapist that challenged me and asked me questions that were allowing me to feel uncomfortable on a routine basis. I'm a crier, and so I really had to dig deep and sit with feeling uncomfortable. 2, interview therapists like you're hiring them. You're paying for the service, so you have the right to ask questions. Example questions would be, what's your approach for anxiety? How do we measure progress? In some of my interviews, I immediately knew we were not a match. If tone is a big deal like it is for me, I know immediately that I'm never going to be comfortable. I can tell the minute when I pick up the phone, within probably 1 or 2 words, I actually want to hang up the phone. Other times I had to try for 1 or 2 sessions before I realized I wasn't saying anything in the session. So it really does take several approaches and interviews. You're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. Check your chemistry. As I mentioned, therapy will be uncomfortable. It's therapy, but you should feel safe. If you sense judgment or they seem disinterested, move on. Maybe talk about a time you got a weird vibe from a therapist, text, or email from a previous situation, and test them a little bit. See what their reaction is. That will give you a pulse check really on what the chemistry is like. Balance cost or fit. Yes, therapy can be expensive. Ask if they're willing to offer a sliding scale. Check your insurance. Or if it is a good fit for you, consider group therapy. I always say a good therapist at $200 might be cheaper in the long run than a mediocre one at $50 if you're not getting anywhere. Last but not least, know when it's time to move on. Even if it got started fantastic and great right from the get-go, you can outgrow a therapist. That's normal. And don't feel guilty for wanting more from your sessions. That's the point of therapy. I really encourage you to jot these down and revisit them later. Any one of these tips can change and revamp to get you to what your goals are when working with your therapist. Now that we've covered my cringeworthy stories and these 5 tips, let's keep the conversation going with next steps. Free 15-minute check-ins. I offer these for anyone stuck in insurance nightmares or not sure where to start. Next, our Unfiltered YouTube. More face-to-face content here, behind the scenes, Q&As, and the real-life stuff we often avoid talking about. Our most exciting, of course, our VIP Circle waitlist. It's coming soon. A members-only community with live events, bonus content, a supportive tribe. The biggest aspect of it is 15% of our VIP Circle will be given back to our Lumani Health Foundation. That's your jam. Sign up on the link below. And some resources for you, therapist directories. Check out Psychology Today or TherapyDen to filter by specialty, insurance, and more. For cost concerns, you can reach out to me in the comments section and I can go over how to review sliding scale fees, as well as reaching out to local nonprofits. I'd love to hear more about your success stories or someone you might know. Of course, protecting identity, how you may have found a great therapist or any resources. So chat in the comment section and subscribe now. Let's be honest. Therapy can be awkward, intense, and sometimes it feels like you're bearing your soul to a stranger. But if you find the right match, it seriously can change your life. I compare it to hunting for that perfect pair of jeans. You might just have to try in a bunch before something finally fits just right. Remember, you're not broken or weird for wanting help. You're human. And if you need a professional to guide you through the chaos, that doesn't make you weak. It makes you proactive. If today's chat resonated with you, please share it with a friend or leave a review. It helps our community reach more people who might be stuck in the therapy dating maze. Thank you so much for tuning in to Lumani Unfiltered. I'm Stephanie LaPrey, reminding you that you deserve a therapist who meets you where you are and pushes you just enough to grow. Don't settle for meh when hell yes is within reach. Until next time, stay curious, advocate for yourself, and keep living that fabulous life. See you soon.